Hey, it's Madeline. This is my Module 5 discussion board for the data-driven and kind of the collection of instruction and assessments within a classroom. So just jumping right in here, I first kind of found it really interesting that the data-driven instruction kind of shifts from that focus of a set curriculum to more of kind of meeting those students' needs throughout the year and kind of those more individual needs of a learner, and also how can it seems like it can be a little bit more flexible and responsive and can kind of be adapted throughout the year, which, as every teacher knows, you have to stay flexible and be able to adapt throughout the year and adapt along with your students. And I kind of think the article part of it was talking about how this was more of a team-based kind of task more than individual, like the administrators, the teachers, kind of everyone collaborating through those PLCs to help improve the student growth, like using this kind of data and data collecting processes was really interesting. And I think I've definitely already kind of seen this through my field experience as I've gotten to sit on just a few PLC meetings and just see the way the teachers across the board are collecting data and figuring out plans for individualized student needs and how they can help each other grow and what they're kind of giving their classroom as these assessments, kind of making sure everyone is kind of getting the same thing. So I thought that was a really cool idea and way to look at it. And the other thing was that I wrote down the idea that like the data isn't just the numbers and the scores kind of stood out to me. It's kind of reflective in the sense that this is kind of an engagement pattern that's actually affecting learning, and it's not just another like number on a graph. Basically, like this is all these numbers within these formative and summative assessments are affecting learning for these students and show more of a pattern and how a student is growing and how a student is learning. So I thought that was a good visualizer to kind of see that this is not just data on a spreadsheet. And then the other thing that I liked in there was the cycle of the data-driven instruction, and just talking about how that cycle includes, starting off collecting your baseline, analyzing results, and then kind of making those instructional decisions as a teacher and creating, I think there were the SMART goals for kids, and then kind of just reflecting on what you're doing as a teacher and then adjusting that instruction. I think that's a great baseline, just kind of bulleted points of what this actually looks like on a day-to-day basis and a day-to-day in classroom use of this data collection process. I think it's also a very ongoing thing. I think teachers are always kind of improving their instruction based on the evidence that they are finding and not just something that they are assuming. So we as teachers don't just need to be assuming kids are grasping these things. I think it's easy to just kind of maybe look over at your class and think, okay, everyone's getting it, everyone's got where they need to be, but really, until we do all of these little data-driven instructions and tests and formative little assessments, just everything throughout the day, you really then can see if kids are grasping it or not. And we're no longer using our assumptions that could be wrong, and we're actually improving our lesson planning and teaching based on that evidence. And then kind of just the overall of this module, like the formative can be things like exit tickets, the class discussion, that kind of thing. And then those summative are those EOGs, unit tests, and final projects. And as a teacher, you want to have a good balance of both in your classroom. I just think back to even when I was a student. I know I always did great in class with the exit tickets and class discussions and was always participating and had a great grade throughout the year. But when it came time to those EOGs and unit tests, I would have either testing anxiety or sorts of just kind of do poorly on bigger tests like that. So I think it's really important to always include those formative assessments, just because there is a lot of sometimes underlying pressures in those big kind of summative tests. Like they are important to have, definitely, but also making sure to include a formative assessments along the way, so you're kind of seeing your student as a whole and not just on those testing days, which we all know can be kind of nerve-wracking for some students. And kind of just thinking about how I would use this in a future classroom, I think I've kind of already gotten a feel of kind of how to use some of these things, even just through my field experience. And I am glad we're learning about it even this semester, so I can automatically carry this into my classroom next semester. Just kind of watching out for those SMART goals for students and just tracking their growth, and kind of collecting a mix of those assessments and not just relying heavily on those end of grade or those big final projects to reflect that data and to truly understand kind of my students holistically. And also just PLCs again, like how important PLCs are to discuss those interventions and to share what's working with your partnership teachers. And just that all makes the year go by better when you're all sharing your ideas and how to be supportive and grow not just your students in your classroom, but grow your teaching skills and how to reach these students. And someone might have a better idea or a new idea that you haven't tried before and that might work for your classroom. And just kind of in a whole, I think being more data driven will kind of help me realize those personal learning decisions that I want to make in my classroom based on real evidence rather than just like a routine and observing my classroom. While observing and routine is good in a classroom, you do want that hard data and evidence to really see where your class is at. So I enjoyed this module. I think it was very helpful and very realistic information to kind of soak in before our student teaching semester next semester.